Thank you, Janie. And I would, of course, like to thank very much Uncle Bill and Auntie Marilyn for coming. And, of course, it's fantastic that Bob Brown has come here today. I know that he has been a major draw card for getting many of you along. And he certainly inspired us to pull out all stops and pull together an event like this in 6 days, which tested our ability to remain calm. But nonetheless, I think every minute of it has been worth it. I first met Bob Brown, he wouldn't remember actually, because as in an occasion like this, it's a sea of faces that come past and shake hands. But it was in 1994 at the Royal Hotel in Taree, where he was doing a road show with Ian Cohen, who was running at that stage for the Greens for the upper house in New South Wales. And they did a sort of a PowerPoint presentation and talked and sold t-shirts and all that sort of stuff. And it was quite a big turnout, and out of that there came the enthusiasm that in order to save the forests, the Greens need to get a member elected into the New South Wales Parliament. Now I have to confess that up until that point I wasn't on the electoral roll. It had been probably a long time that I hadn't voted, and I was pretty cynical, I have to admit, about the political process. That's right. Gary knew me back in those days, a long time ago. And but I was passionate about the forests. I had come to live in this part of the world attracted by the green of the hills. And no sooner had Greg and I arrived to Elands than somebody said, "Oh, you've arrived just for the beginning of the end. There's an environmental impact statement out and they're just given permission to basically log all these forests because it's going to have no environmental impact." And what? You know, I came from Victoria, from Melbourne, where there was no old growth forests in the hills surrounding Melbourne because they all burnt. Mountain ash forests, they all burnt in the 1939 bushfires, and all the forests in those hills are basically regrowth. And it was only when some people took me out into the forest up in the Bulga State Forest and said, well, this is what old growth looks like, that I realised that it was these most amazing trees and the feel of the place, to go somewhere which is relatively undisturbed and has been undisturbed for hundreds, thousands of years, you know, where the people who have been there have passed by with respect. So we had spent, well, first of all, we'd written our submissions to the EIS, and needless to say that didn't work. And so then we tried blockading, because that's what apparently you did in those days, and we were lucky to be in a community where the majority sentiment was, well, let's stop the trucks. So we had months of stopping the trucks, going out into the forest, slogging around in the mud, building tripods, putting up tree sits, hiding from police, and still the trees kept falling. And so then it was an opportunity to go to court. We thought, oh, well, we'll try that. So we got together a court case to challenge the fauna impact statement, and we went off to court, and we could only afford a junior barrister, and it was only when we got there that we realised that our junior barrister was actually his first case. And he was up against the QC, who was a former judge of the Land and Environment Court, and the saga for judges and courts, for those of you who don't know, is that at morning tea, the barristers all go off and have morning tea with the judge. It's all very chatty, and because all sides are represented, nobody talks shop, supposedly, and who would know? And so we had our junior barrister, and within about 3 days, he had conceded about 90% of our case. And we were incredibly despondent and depressed, and we had managed to get a story on the 7:30 report that night about what was happening in the forest, and in a sort of statement of determination and the will to fight back, we decided that we would sack our barrister and that I would be the barrister. And that representation in Parliament opened doors for us that I hadn't realised were possible. All of a sudden, instead of being protesting outside, we were running around the corridors inside. And it led to a process where on the North Coast, on the public land forests, most of the old growth has been protected. So from that inspirational meeting, for me, my commitment to the Greens has grown, obviously, and part of that commitment and inspiration comes, like for so many of you, from having Bob Brown out there as the conscience of the nation. As I pointed out to somebody the other day, on our fridge we've got a postcard, many of you will have seen it. It's the photo of Bob Brown and Kerry Neal sitting in the Senate with George Bush. And Bob's there with his arms saying, you know, it's okay, George, we're still prepared to love you. You know, it's not too late. You know, you can still find humanity. And I think it's that generosity of spirit, the boundless optimism. Those are the sort of reasons why we all care so much and appreciate so much the fact that Bob does what he does and spends his life travelling around the countryside bringing hope and inspiration to all of us. So I'd like to thank you all very much and welcome Bob Brown to